The morning I found my face plastered across Olivia Reed's photography Instagram was the morning I decided to die. Not literally, though the thought did cross my mind as I scrolled through hundreds of comments calling me Brooklyn's most awkward woman. No, what died that day was the old Mia Chen, the invisible girl who spent 27 years shrinking herself, apologizing for existing, and letting people like Olivia Reed use her as a punchline. Look at her, the caption read. This is what happens when you hand the camera to someone who doesn't know they're not photogenic. Hash realness series, hash unfiltered truths. She'd snapped the photo at the company holiday party right after I'd spilled wine on my only decent dress. My hair was frizzed from the rain, mascara smudged beneath eyes wide with surprise. I looked exactly how I felt, like a disaster caught in headlights. 64,000 likes, 17,000 shares, and me staring at my phone in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, something snapping inside that couldn't be put back together. Okay, Olivia, I whispered to my cracked phone screen, a strange calm settling over me. You wanted a subject? You're about to get one. My name is Mia Chen, and I'm a graphic designer. Or I was. 27 years old, working behind the scenes at Prism Media, a digital marketing agency in Brooklyn that buzzed with the kind of relentless, performative cool that always made me feel like I was wearing clothes a size too small. I was good at my job. My designs were clean, effective, and usually completed ahead of schedule. But I was quiet. The kind of quiet that makes people forget you're in the room, invisible. That was me. Then there was Olivia Reed. Olivia was everything I wasn't. Instagram famous photographer, an influencer with a capital 9, and our newly minted creative director. She walked into Prism like a human sunbeam, all bright smiles and effortless charisma, with a trail of double taps and adoring comments following her every post. She was beautiful, of course, in that artfully disheveled way that takes hours to achieve, but looks like she just rolled out of bed looking perfect. Her arrival had been heralded like the second coming, and the office air, already thick with ambition, crackled with a new intensity. The company holiday party was held at some too-cool-for-school warehouse loft in Dumbo. Exposed brick, fairy lights, the thumping bass of a DJ playing music I pretended to recognize. I hated these things. The forced merriment, the small talk. I'd made a brief appearance, determined to at least try to network or at least not look like a total recluse. That's when the wine incident happened. A clumsy waiter, a sudden turn, and a splash of red down the front of my one decent beige and utterly forgettable dress. Classic Mia. I was dabbing at the stain in a poorly lit corner, feeling the familiar heat of embarrassment creep up my neck, when Olivia found me. She was a few glasses of champagne in, her laughter echoing a little too loudly. "Oh, honey disaster, right?" she'd said, her eyes sparkling. Then, without warning, she'd whipped out her phone. "Hold still, this is perfect." Click. The flash was blinding. I remember squinting, my hand still clutching the damp napkin, my mouth probably hanging open in a stupid O of surprise. My hair, already a victim of the December drizzle, was doing its own wild thing. I looked, in short, like a startled raccoon. "Don't worry," she'd slurred, already tapping away at her screen. "It's for my realness series. People love authentic." I'd mumbled something, a weak protest, but she was already gone, swallowed by a group of adoring colleagues. I hadn't thought much of it. Just another awkward moment in the life of Mia Chen. Until the next morning, the post was already viral. My horrified face, the wine stain, the frizzy hair, all broadcast to Olivia Reed's hundreds of thousands of followers. And the caption, "Look at her. This is what happens when you hand the camera to someone who doesn't know they're not photogenic." Hash realness series, hash unfiltered truths. So, the comments were a tidal wave of cruelty and amusement. OMG, so cringy. Poor thing. This is why some people should stay behind the camera. And then, the worst. Wait, isn't that the quiet girl from marketing? Yeah, Mia, LOL. My colleagues, they knew. They were laughing. My stomach churned. The air in my tiny apartment suddenly felt too thin to breathe. 64,000 likes. 17,000 shares. The numbers kept climbing, each one a tiny hammer blow against the already fragile shell of my self-esteem. This wasn't new, this feeling of being a cosmic joke. My whole life had been a masterclass in being overlooked. My parents, immigrants who'd sacrificed everything to give me a foothold in America, had their own ideas about success: good grades, a practical job, financial security. They'd pushed me towards sensible choices like graphic design, a skill, marketable. But praise, affection, those were luxuries they couldn't afford or perhaps didn't know how to give. I was a good daughter, a quiet achiever, but I never felt seen. Not really. Professionally, it was the same story. I'd pour my heart into projects, only to see my ideas subtly absorbed by louder voices, my contributions uncredited in the final presentation. Team effort, they'd say, but I knew. I was the ghost in the machine, the unseen cog that kept things running smoothly while others took the bows. My dating history was a bleak comedy. I was always the practice girlfriend, the one guys dated before they found the one. I was nice, supportive, undemanding, the perfect placeholder. They'd tell me how great I was, how easy I was to be around. Right before they broke up with me to marry someone else, someone more memorable. The only thing that kept me going, the only place I felt a flicker of something real, was in the design itself. The clean lines, the perfect kerning, the satisfaction of bringing an idea to life on a screen. That was my sanctuary, my quiet rebellion. Even if no one else noticed, I knew. I knew I had talent. It was the only thing that kept the encroaching sense of my own insignificance at bay. Until now. Until Olivia Reed decided to make my insignificance a public spectacle. The walk into Prism Media that Monday felt like a walk of shame. Every glance, every whispered conversation felt directed at me. I could feel the heat on my face, the desperate urge to turn and run. But I couldn't. I had to face her. I found Olivia in her glass-walled office, already holding court, a latte in one hand, gesturing expansively with the other. She looked up as I hovered in the doorway, her smile bright and entirely unapologetic. "Mia, hey, you saw the post? It's blowing up," she said, as if she were discussing a particularly successful ad campaign. My voice was barely a squeak. "Olivia, I need you to take it down, please." She tilted her head, her smile faltering slightly, replaced by a look of mild surprise, as if I'd asked her to stop breathing. "Take it down? Why, it's art, Mia. I'm documenting authentic moments. It's a series about real people, unfiltered. Don't take yourself so seriously." "But it's me," I managed, my hands twisting in front of me. "It's embarrassing. People are saying things." "Oh, people are always saying things," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's just the internet. Besides, it's getting amazing engagement. The agency looks good, I look good. It's a win-win." Just then, Mr. Henderson, the agency's overall creative director and Olivia's new boss, walked by. He beamed at Olivia. "That realness shot is genius, Olivia. Pure gold." He glanced at me, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Ah, Mia, you're famous. You should be flattered. Part of something so successful." Flattered. He actually said flattered. Humiliation washed over me, cold and sickening. They didn't care. They didn't see a person. They saw content, engagement, likes. I was a meme, a punchline, and they were celebrating it. I mumbled an incoherent excuse and fled. The stares followed me. I could hear snickers, even clients. What if clients had seen it? My carefully constructed professional invisibility shattered. I made it to the office bathroom just as the panic attack hit. The floor tiles were cold against my cheek as I gasped for air, tears streaming down my face. The world was tilting, a cacophony of Olivia's laughter and cruel, anonymous comments swirling in my head. "Hey, are you okay?" A voice cut through the haze. Zoe, the office manager. She was older, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd always been a quiet, steady presence in the office, the one who actually made things work while everyone else was busy being creative. Now she was kneeling beside me, a paper cup of water in her hand. "Here," she said gently. "Breathe with me." She didn't ask questions. She just sat with me, her presence a small, solid anchor in the storm of my despair. And for the first time that day, I didn't feel completely alone. That night, sleep was impossible. My phone, now a source of pure dread, lay face down on my nightstand. Every notification sound made me jump. I replayed the day's humiliations on a loop, Olivia's dismissive words, Henderson's oblivious praise, the imagined laughter of my colleagues. The old Mia would have crawled into a hole and stayed there. The old Mia would have quit, found some other anonymous corner to disappear into. But something was different. That calm I'd felt staring at the post that morning hadn't entirely dissipated. It was still there, a cold, hard knot in my stomach. It wasn't resignation. It was something else, something harder. Around 2 a.m., an email pinged. Not another Instagram notification. This was different. The subject line read, "Your portfolio, Ellis Grant." Ellis Grant. I knew the name. Founder of Ellis Grant Agency, one of Prism's biggest rivals. A legendary figure in the design world known for his edgy, groundbreaking campaigns. My heart gave a strange little lurch. He'd seen my portfolio? How? I'd sent it out months ago, a desperate, hopeful scattershot into the void, never expecting a response. The email was brief. He liked my work. He was impressed. He was looking for a lead designer for a major new fashion campaign. Verite, a big name, a huge opportunity. He wanted to meet. My first instinct was to say no. Me? Lead a campaign? For Verite? The thought was laughable. I was Brooklyn's most awkward woman. I was a disaster caught in headlights. I didn't have the confidence, the polish, the anything required for a role like that. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from my mother. "Grandma not doing well. Doctor says need to prepare." My grandmother in Taiwan. The one person in my family who'd always had a quiet smile for me, a gentle hand on my arm. The unspoken message was clear. If I wanted to see her, to help with medical bills, I needed money. More money than Prism Media was ever going to pay their invisible graphic designer. Suddenly, the cold knot in my stomach tightened into resolve. The universe had just handed me a choice. Shrink or fight. Disappear or reinvent. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone, the frizzy hair, the tired eyes. This was not the face of a lead designer. This was not the face of someone who could command a room, pitch to clients, inspire a team. But maybe it didn't have to be. A new thought, sharp and clear, cut through the fog of my despair. Olivia wanted a subject? Fine. She'd made me one. But what if I could become a different kind of subject? One of my own making. I picked up my phone and typed out a reply to Ellis Grant. Yes, I would meet. Then I opened a new tab. How much does a complete makeover cost in NYC? Mia Chen was dead. It was time for M. Chen to be born. The next morning, I walked into my bank and cashed out nearly all my savings. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough for a start. Enough for a declaration of war on the person I had been. My first call was to Zoe. I met her for coffee before work, the steam from our cups mingling with the nervous energy radiating off me. "I need your help," I said, the words tumbling out. "I got a job offer, a big one, but I can't do it as me." I gestured vaguely at myself, at the Mia who still felt like she was wearing an ill-fitting costume. Zoe listened, her expression unreadable at first. Then, a slow smile spread across her face. "You know," she said, stirring her cappuccino, "before I became the queen of spreadsheets and office supplies, I worked in fashion photography, assisting, styling, the whole circus." I stared at her. Zoe, quiet, efficient Zoe? It was like finding out your unassuming librarian was a retired secret agent. "If you're going to be looked at, Mia," she said, her eyes meeting mine, a new intensity in them, "make sure it's on your terms." She paused. "So what's the plan?" And just like that, I had an ally, a surprisingly well-equipped one. The transformation began. It wasn't just about clothes and makeup, though there was plenty of that. Zoe was ruthless. My mousy brown hair became a sleek, dark bob, sharp and intentional. My wardrobe of beige and gray was replaced with tailored pieces in bold colors, clothes that demanded space, that spoke before I even opened my mouth. She taught me about posture, shoulders back, head high. She corrected my speech patterns, urging me to project, to eliminate the hesitant uptalk that had always marked me as unsure. But the deeper work was harder. Zoe started filming me. Mock interviews, presentations, even just conversations. Watching myself was excruciating. I saw every nervous tick, every downcast glance, every apologetic shrug. See? Zoe would say, not unkindly. That's what they see. Now, what do you want them to see? Slowly, painstakingly, I started to build a new persona, M. Chen. She was confident. She was assertive. She made eye contact. She didn't apologize for existing. She was everything Mia Chen wasn't. And with every passing day, the line between Mia and M. Chen began to blur just a little. 3 weeks later, I walked into Prism Media for the last time. I handed in my notice to a surprised HR manager. No dramatic speeches, no tearful goodbyes. I just left. Olivia saw me by the elevators. Mia, where have you been hiding? Still recovering from your 15 minutes of fame? She said, a smirk playing on her lips. She hadn't noticed the hair, the new clothes, the subtle shift in my demeanor. To her, I was still just the punchline. The old Mia would have withered. But M. Chen just smiled, a cool, polite smile. Actually, Olivia, I said, my voice even, I wanted to thank you. Her smirk wavered. Thank me for what? For showing me who I wasn't meant to be. And with that, I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing on her bewildered face. The offices of Ellis Grant Agency were a world away from Prism, sleek, minimalist with an undercurrent of focused intensity. When I walked in for my first day as Yao Chen, head of design for the Verite campaign, I felt a tremor of the old Mia's fear, but I pushed it down, shoulders back, head high. Ellis Grant himself greeted me. He was older, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. M. Chen, he said, his handshake firm. Welcome, we're expecting great things. I met the team. They were young, ambitious, a little intimidating. But I remembered Zoe's coaching. I made eye contact. I spoke clearly. I presented myself not as the Instagram disaster girl, but as M. Chen, the designer they had hired for her talent. And to my surprise, they seemed to accept it. They saw what I projected. The Verite campaign was a beast, a high-profile launch for a new luxury sustainable fashion line. The pressure was immense. In the initial brainstorming meetings, I presented my concepts. They were bold, drawing on my own raw experiences of visibility and invisibility, of false fronts and authentic selves. I talked about the power of transformation, of reclaiming one's image. There was a hush in the room when I finished. Then, Ellis Grant nodded slowly. I like it, he said. It's different. It's got teeth. The campaign photographer was Julian West. He was quiet, observant, with a reputation for capturing an almost unsettling honesty in his subjects. He had a way of looking at me, a slight, almost imperceptible narrowing of his eyes, that made me feel like he could see the cracks in my M. Chen facade. But he never said anything, just watched, intrigued. His work was incredible, and his respect, when I slowly earned it through the strength of my ideas, felt like a validation I hadn't even known I was craving. My first major presentation to the Verite clients was terrifying. For a horrifying moment, as all eyes in the boardroom turned to me, I froze. The old Mia, the deer in headlights, threatened to resurface. I could almost hear Olivia's mocking laughter. Then, I saw Zoe's face in my mind. Shoulders back, head high, I took a breath, and M. Chen spoke. I recovered. I laid out my vision passionately, articulately. I talked about breaking down the curated perfection of fashion advertising, about showing the real, messy, beautiful process of becoming. When I finished, the lead client, a formidable woman named Isabelle Dubois, actually smiled. Intriguing, Miss Chen, she said. Very intriguing. Late nights became the norm. I lived on coffee and adrenaline, refining the campaign, sketching, storyboarding. I poured all my pain, my anger, my quiet longing to be seen into the work. And as the campaign took shape, something else began to take shape within me. Confidence. Real confidence. Not just the M. Chen costume. People were listening to me. They valued my ideas. They saw me, or at least the me I was becoming. And it was exhilarating. Then came the bombshell. Ellis called me into his office. "The Verite campaign," he said, a gleam in his eye. "It's going to be big, really big. We're talking billboards all over New York. Billboards, my designs, my vision, plastered across the city." A thrill shot through me, quickly followed by a cold wave of dread. "Where?" I asked, my voice tighter than I intended. Ellis grinned. "Prime locations, Times Square, Soho, and, as a little cherry on top, directly opposite the offices of Prism Media." My blood ran cold. Prism Media, Olivia, my former colleagues. They would see it. Would they recognize my work? Would they recognize me? The M. Chen I'd so carefully constructed felt suddenly fragile, like a mask that could shatter at any moment. As if that wasn't enough, Ellis dropped another bomb. "Prism is pitching for the second phase of the Verite campaign," he said, his expression now serious. "Verite wants to see how we work together, how our visions align. They've requested you be in the pitch meeting, M. You'll be presenting our initial success and our concept for phase 2, against Olivia Reed." Olivia. I would be face to face with Olivia. Not as Mia Chen, the invisible girl, the office joke, but as M. Chen, her direct competitor. The thought was both terrifying and strangely, fiercely satisfying. And then there was Julian. Our late nights working on the campaign had forged a connection, a shared passion for the work, a mutual respect. I found myself drawn to his quiet intensity, the way he saw the world through his lens. I thought he felt something too, a subtle shift in the way he looked at me, a lingering touch when he handed me a contact sheet. But he was holding back, a guardedness I couldn't quite penetrate. It was another layer of complication in a life that was suddenly anything but simple. The stage was set. For a launch, for a confrontation, for a collision of my past and my present. The invisible girl was about to step into the brightest spotlight imaginable. And I had no idea if Emir Chen was strong enough to withstand the glare. The days leading up to the pitch meeting were a blur of frantic preparation and simmering anxiety. I rehearsed my presentation until the words felt like a second skin. Zoe drilled me, playing devil's advocate, poking holes in my arguments, forcing me to be sharper, quicker, more confident. Julian, in his quiet way, was a steadying presence, offering insightful critiques of the visuals, his belief in my concept a silent reassurance. The morning of the pitch, I stood in front of my mirror. The reflection that stared back was Yin Chen, impeccably dressed, hair perfect, a cool, appraising look in her eyes. But beneath the surface, Mia Chen was a bundle of nerves. "You can do this," I told my reflection. "This is your stage now." Walking into the Verite boardroom felt like stepping into an arena. Isabelle Dubois and her team were there, their expressions neutral. And then I saw them, the Prism Media contingent. Olivia Reed was front and center, looking every inch the glamorous creative director, a confident smirk already in place. She didn't recognize me at first. I saw the flicker of confusion in her eyes as I was introduced. M. Chen, lead designer, Ellis Grant Agency. She scanned me up and down, a slight frown creasing her brow. Just another competitor, another obstacle. Then, as I began my presentation, as my voice filled the room, clear and steady, I saw the moment it clicked. Her eyes widened, the smirk vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Her jaw literally dropped. Mia Chen. This was Mia Chen. The awkward, invisible girl she'd ridiculed. Standing here, commanding the room, presenting a campaign that was already making waves. The shock on her face was a small, deeply satisfying victory. I didn't falter. I walked them through the success of phase 1, the incredible engagement, the buzz we'd generated. Then, I unveiled our concept for phase 2. It was an evolution of the realness theme, but deeper, more nuanced. It was about the journey of transformation, about the courage it takes to redefine yourself. It was, in essence, my story, distilled into a brand message. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, Isabelle Dubois smiled. "Impressive, Miss Chen. Very impressive." Olivia, however, was not about to let me have my moment. During the quanda, she pounced. "Monsieur Chen," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Your transformation is quite remarkable. You seem to have a very interesting past. Does your previous experience inform your current work? The implication was clear. She was trying to rattle me, to hint at my Instagram disaster girl past without explicitly saying it. The old Mia would have crumbled. But Emma Chen held her gaze. Indeed it does, Miss Reed, I said, my voice smooth as silk. I believe our pasts always inform our presents. And some of us, thankfully, evolve beyond our first impressions. Wouldn't you agree? The barb hit its mark. A faint flush rose on Olivia's cheeks. Isabelle Dubois hid a small smile. Point to M. Chen. The pitch had gone well, but I knew Olivia. She wasn't the type to take a defeat gracefully, or a surprise. My sudden metamorphosis from office mouse to sleek professional had clearly thrown her. And Olivia Reed did not like to be thrown. Sure enough, the whispers started. Olivia began digging into my background. I heard from former Prism colleagues that she was asking questions, trying to piece together how Mia Chen had suddenly become M. Chen. She was suspicious, like a dog with a bone she couldn't quite place. It was Julian who gave me the full picture. We were working late one night reviewing photoshoot proofs. Be careful with Olivia, he said, his voice low. I looked at him, surprised. You know her? A shadow crossed his face. We dated, briefly, a long time ago. He paused, then continued. She has a pattern. When she feels threatened or rejected, she can be destructive. She doesn't like to lose. His words sent a chill down my spine. Destructive, what was she capable of? A few days later, Verite made their decision. They loved our concept. They were awarding the entire campaign, Phase 2 included, to Ellis Grant Agency. And I, M. Chen, was to be the creative director for the whole thing. It should have been a moment of pure triumph. But Julian's warning echoed in my ears. Olivia's counterattack wasn't direct. Not at first. It was subtle, insidious. She started posting a new series on her Instagram, transformation photos, before and afters of various people, extreme makeovers, weight loss journeys, that sort of thing. But the captions were pointed, laced with innuendo. #Transformation Tuesday, but is it real, or just a really good filter? #authenticity is key #. Some changes are only skin deep. She never mentioned my name. She didn't have to. The message was clear, aimed directly at me and at anyone in the industry who might be paying attention. She was trying to discredit me, to paint my transformation as superficial, a fraud. The fear that I'd tried so hard to suppress began to creep back in. The fear of exposure. What if she did reveal the Instagram disaster girl photo? What if she managed to convince everyone that Enner Chen was just a lie, a carefully constructed artifice? The thought of that humiliation, on this new, grander scale, was terrifying. I realized that fear was holding me back, making me second-guess myself, dulling the shine of my hard-won success. The Verite campaign was evolving. My initial concept of Reborn, focusing on the power of self-definition, was resonating deeply with the client and with early focus groups. We decided to lean into it even further to feature real stories of transformation, not just models in beautiful clothes. We were in a planning meeting, brainstorming who these real people could be when Julian spoke up. He'd been quiet, listening intently, his photographer's eye observing everything. Mia, he said, his gaze meeting mine across the conference table. Everyone else called me M, or Miss Chen. He was the only one who occasionally, softly, used Mia. The most authentic transformation story we have is yours. The room went silent. All eyes turned to me. You should be featured in the campaign, he continued, his voice steady. Your journey embodies the brand message perfectly. It's real. It's powerful. My first instinct was a visceral no. Expose myself like that? Willingly? Put my vulnerability on display for the world to see? It was everything I'd been fighting against. The thought of my before picture, the wine-stained, frizzy-haired disaster, alongside the polished M. Chen, was mortifying. I I can't, I stammered, the M. Chen mask slipping. But later that night, alone in my apartment, I reconsidered. Olivia was already trying to expose me, to control my narrative. What if, what if I took that power away from her? What if I told my own story, on my own terms? What if the very thing I was terrified of, being seen, truly seen, flaws and all, was actually my greatest strength? The idea was terrifying, but it was also liberating. It was the ultimate act of reclaiming my image. I called Julian. Okay, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I'll do it. The photo shoot was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Julian was incredible. He didn't just take pictures, he created a space where I felt safe enough to be vulnerable. He didn't want M. Chen, the polished professional. He wanted Mia, the real Mia, the one who had been broken and was slowly, painfully putting herself back together. There were no fancy poses, no forced smiles. He just talked to me, asked me about my journey, my fears, my hopes, and he photographed what he saw, the strength, yes, but also the fragility, the defiance, but also the lingering pain. When I saw the proofs, I cried. For the first time, I saw myself clearly. Not as Instagram disaster girl, not even as the carefully constructed M. Chen, but as someone beautifully, imperfectly, authentically whole. Ellis and the Verite team were blown away. There was one portrait in particular, a simple, direct shot. Me looking straight at the camera, a quiet strength in my eyes. A hint of a smile playing on my lips. It was honest, it was raw, it was me. This is it, Isabelle Dubois said, her voice hushed. This is the centerpiece of the campaign. This is the billboard. My face, my story, on a massive billboard for all of New York, for all the world to see. The news that I would be the face of the Reborn campaign, my own transformation story front and center, sent shockwaves through the industry. And it reached Olivia Reed. Her reaction was swift and predictable. She found out about the specific portrait chosen for the main billboard, the one that would feature my current image. And she made her move. An anonymous email landed in Ellis Grant's inbox and then in Isabelle Dubois'. Attached was the original Instagram post. My horrified, wine-stained face, the Brooklyn's most awkward woman comments, and a message. Is this the authentic transformation Verite wants to celebrate? The face of your campaign is a viral laughingstock. This will destroy your brand. The fallout was immediate. Ellis called me into his office, his face grim. We have a problem, M. Isabelle Dubois was on speakerphone, her voice tight with concern. This is damaging, Miss Chen, highly damaging. We may need to reconsider the campaign creative. Perhaps use a model as originally planned. The pressure was immense. Change the campaign, hide my story, protect the brand. It was exactly what Olivia wanted, to silence me, to shame me back into invisibility. Julian stood by me. This is an attack, Ellis, Isabelle, he argued fiercely. Olivia is trying to sabotage Mia. Mia's story is the campaign. It's what makes it powerful. If you back down now, you're letting her win. But he also warned me, his eyes full of concern. If this gets out, Mia, your career, it could be tough. The industry can be unforgiving. As if to amplify the pressure, another call came. My mother. Grandma's health had taken a turn for the worse. She was asking for me. The unspoken need for funds, for me to be able to drop everything and fly to Taiwan, hung heavy in the air. Everything felt like it was closing in. That night, doubt consumed me. I sat in my apartment, the glittering lights of the city outside my window feeling like mocking eyes. Maybe Olivia was right. Maybe I was a fraud. Maybe M. Chen was just a costume and Mia Chen, the disaster, was the truth. I'd come so far, fought so hard, but the thought of losing everything, my career, the campaign, the chance to help my family, was overwhelming. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over Ellis's number. I could tell him to pull the portrait, use a model, disappear back into the shadows. It would be so easy, so safe. The old Mia was screaming at me to do it. But then, I remembered the feeling in that photo shoot with Julian. The rawness, the honesty, the strength I hadn't known I possessed. I remembered Zoe's words. If you're going to be looked at, make sure it's on your terms. Olivia wanted to expose me? Fine. I would beat her to it. I didn't call Ellis to back down. Instead, I worked through the night, fueled by a desperate, defiant energy. If Olivia thought she could use my past to destroy my future, she was mistaken. I wouldn't just own my story, I would wield it like a weapon. By dawn, I had a new presentation, a digital portfolio side by side. On one side, Olivia's viral photo, the epitome of Instagram disaster girl. On the other, Julian's powerful portrait of me, the face of Reborn. Beneath it, a single bold headline, my story, my terms. I didn't just show the transformation, I narrated it. The humiliation, the despair, the decision to fight back. The painstaking process of reinventing myself, not as a perfect, airbrushed ideal, but as a stronger, more authentic version of Mia Chen. I called Ellis and Isabelle Dubois first thing in mobilization. I have a revised concept for the campaign, I said, my voice devoid of the previous night's tremor. It's bolder, more honest, and I think it's exactly what Verite needs. I presented it to them via video conference. The Reborn campaign, now explicitly centered around my journey, including the very image Olivia had tried to use against me. The tagline, Reborn, your image belongs to you. It wasn't just about fashion, it was about empowerment, about taking control of your own narrative, no matter how unflattering the starting point. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I held my breath. Then, Isabelle Dubois spoke, her voice filled with a new respect. Miss Chen, Mia, this is extraordinary. This is not just a campaign, it's a statement. It's precisely the kind of fearless authenticity Verite stands for. Ellis was beaming. It's risky, it's brave, and it's brilliant. We're doing it. My heart soared. They got it. They understood. My next call was to Olivia Reed. I asked her to meet me for coffee. She sounded surprised, wary, but agreed. Probably expected me to beg her to stop, to plead for mercy. She was in for a surprise. The Verite legal team, fully on board with the new Radically Honest campaign, had one crucial requirement. To use Olivia's original viral photo, the one she'd snapped at the holiday party, we needed a signed release form from the photographer. From Olivia, the irony was delicious. The weapon she'd tried to use against me, I now needed her permission to deploy. We met at a neutral cafe midway between our offices. Olivia arrived looking smug, clearly anticipating my surrender. I let her order her complicated latte before I laid it all out. The Reborn campaign is moving forward, Olivia, I began, my voice calm, steady, and it's going to feature my full story, including the photo you took at the party. Her smugness wavered, replaced by confusion, then dawning realization as I explained the new campaign direction, the client's enthusiastic approval, the tagline. Your image belongs to you. You're going to use that photo? She stammered, the color draining from her face. Publicly? As part of the campaign? Yes, I said. It's integral to the narrative. The Verite team loves it. It shows the starting point, the before. It makes the after even more powerful. I watched her process it. The shock, the disbelief, then a grudging, almost imperceptible flicker of something else. Respect? Admiration? It was hard to tell. She'd tried to shame me, and I'd turned that shame into a badge of honor, a cornerstone of a multi-million-dollar campaign. I'd outmaneuvered her, using her own tactics against her. And to do that, I continued, sliding a document across the table, we need your signature on this release form. As the photographer... She stared at the paper as if it were a snake. Signing it meant giving up any control she had left over that image, over that piece of my past. It meant acknowledging, in a legally binding way, that her attempt to destroy me had, in fact, empowered me. Why would I do that? She asked, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. Why would I help you? Because, Olivia, I said, leaning forward slightly, this campaign is going to be huge. It's already generating massive buzz. And your name, as the photographer of the before shot, will be attached to it. You'll get credit. You'll be part of a groundbreaking campaign, or you can refuse, and look petty and vindictive, and ultimately irrelevant. I let that sink in. She was a creature of ambition, of public perception. The thought of being seen as unprofessional, as a sore loser, would be galling to her. She picked up the pen, her hand hesitating for a long moment. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of her defeated ego, she signed her name. Olivia Reed. As I took the signed form, a sense of triumph, clean and sharp, washed over me. I had faced my tormentor, not with anger, but with strategy. I had taken back my power. "Thank you, Olivia," I said, a genuine note of, not forgiveness perhaps, but something close to acknowledgement in my voice. "You have no idea how much you've helped me." She just looked at me, a complicated expression on her face. "You're something else, Mia-chen." "I had a good teacher," I replied, a small smile playing on my lips. The day the billboards went up was surreal. I stood across the street from the Prism media offices with Julian at my side. His hand found mine, a silent gesture of support. And there it was, my face. Two versions of it, side by side, 20 feet high. On the left, Olivia's snapshot, Brooklyn's most awkward woman, mascara smudged, hair a mess, eyes wide with a kind of startled terror. The raw, unfiltered truth of my lowest point. On the right, Julian's portrait, me M. Chen, looking directly out, a quiet strength in my eyes, a hint of defiance, of resilience, the woman I had become. And beneath them, the tagline, "Reborn, your image belongs to you." A crowd was already gathering. Phones were out, people were pointing, talking, taking pictures. I saw faces I recognized from Prism. My former colleagues, emerging from their building, stopping in their tracks, staring up at the massive display. I saw their shock, their surprise, their dawning understanding. Olivia Reed was among them. She stood a little apart from the others, looking up at the billboard, her arms crossed. Her expression was unreadable from this distance. But she didn't look away. Julian squeezed my hand. "You did it," he whispered, his voice filled with pride. A wave of emotion washed over me, relief, vindication, and a profound sense of peace. I had taken the ugliest, most humiliating moment of my life and transformed it into a symbol of strength. I hadn't erased the old Mia, I had integrated her. She was part of my story, and I was no longer ashamed. The Reborn campaign wasn't just about me anymore. It was for everyone who had ever felt small, overlooked, or defined by someone else's narrative. It was a declaration that we all have the power to reinvent ourselves, to reclaim our image, to decide who we are and how we want to be seen. The campaign went viral, but this time it was on my terms. My story, my face, my message. It resonated. People shared it, talked about it, debated it. Magazine articles were written. I was invited to speak on panels about authenticity and empowerment in advertising. Instagram Disaster Girl became the Reborn Woman. Olivia, to her credit, handled it with a surprising degree of professionalism. The campaign was too big, too successful for her to publicly oppose it. In fact, her association with the before photo, now framed as the catalyst for a celebrated transformation, inadvertently boosted her own profile. She was part of the narrative, whether she liked it or not. She even gave a few interviews talking about her Realness series and the unexpected journey of one of her subjects. There was a grudging respect in her tone when she spoke about me, a recognition that I had played the game better than she had. Our names were suddenly linked in the industry, two women whose careers had become unexpectedly and very publicly intertwined. Ellis Grant Agency was on fire. Verity's sales soared. And I, Mia Chen, was promoted to creative partner. A few weeks after the billboard reveal, I received an unexpected email from Olivia Reed. She was proposing a collaboration, a new photography project, exploring themes of identity and perception. She wanted to work with me. I met her again, this time in my new, spacious office at Ellis Grant. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. "Why?" I asked her, genuinely curious. "Because," she said, meeting my gaze directly, "you're the most interesting subject I've ever encountered. And because, frankly, you beat me. I respect that." I thought about it. A collaboration with Olivia Reed, the woman who had, in her own twisted way, set my entire transformation in motion. It was a complicated thought. "Okay," I said slowly, "but on my terms, equal partnership and full control over my own image. Always." Olivia smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Wouldn't have it any other way, Mia." The first thing I did with my new salary and bonus was book a flight to Taiwan. I walked into my grandmother's hospital room armed not just with money for the best care, but with photos. Photos of the billboards, of the campaign, of me. She was frail, but her eyes, when she saw me, were as bright as ever. I spread the pictures on her bed, telling her the whole story, the humiliation, the fight, the reinvention. When I finished, she reached out and took my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "You know, Mia," she whispered, her voice raspy, "when I first came to America, with your grandfather, I had to reinvent myself too. I left behind my name, my language, my whole life. We all have to be reborn sometimes to survive, to find our strength." It was a revelation. My quiet, unassuming grandmother, a warrior in her own right. I had never known. My parents were there too. And for the first time, I saw a different kind of understanding in their eyes. Not just pride in my success, but a glimmer of recognition of who I was, not just what I did. It was the beginning of a new kind of healing for our family, a quiet bridging of generational and cultural divides. I returned to New York with a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of identity, of the invisible threads that connect us to our heritage, to the quiet acts of transformation that echo through families. And I moved into a new apartment. It was bigger, brighter, and from the living room window, if I craned my neck just right, I could see my billboard. A daily reminder of how far I'd come. 6 months later, Mia Chen Creative Consultancy opened its doors. Ellis had been incredibly supportive, even becoming my first major client. I wanted to build something of my own, to help other brands find their authentic voice, to tell stories that mattered. Julian's photography exhibition, Facades and Truths, opened to critical acclaim. A significant section was dedicated to me behind-the-scenes shots from the Reborn campaign, candid moments of my transformation, capturing the vulnerability and the strength. Our relationship, built on a foundation of mutual respect and seeing each other with unflinching clarity, had deepened into something beautiful and real. He saw me, all of me, and loved what he saw. And I, in turn, was learning to love all of myself. I also launched a mentorship program for young, overlooked creative talents, particularly women and people from underrepresented backgrounds. I knew what it felt like to be invisible, and I was determined to help others find their voice, their platform. One afternoon, Olivia Reed walked into my new studio. It was for our collaborative project. The tables had turned completely. Today, I was photographing her. We were exploring the concept of the public versus private self, the image we project versus the reality we live. "Ready for your close-up, Olivia?" I asked, a playful smile on my face as I looked at her through the lens. She laughed, a genuine, unforced sound. "As I'll ever be, Mia." We weren't friends, not exactly, but we were equals. Two women who had, through a strange and public collision, come to understand something profound about image, power, and the complicated dance of rivalry and respect. Looking back on that whirlwind year, it's still hard to believe how much changed. It started with a moment of intense public shame, a feeling that my life was over. But that moment had been a catalyst, a breaking point that forced me to choose. I realized that being seen isn't what matters. Everyone is seen in one way or another, especially in our hyper-connected world. The real power lies in choosing how you are seen and by whom. It's about owning your narrative, your flaws, your journey. That's true authenticity. The Reborn campaign continued to evolve. Our final photo shoot for Verite wasn't about me or models. It featured a series of real women, each with their own powerful story of transformation. A recovering addict, a cancer survivor, an immigrant entrepreneur, an athlete who'd overcome incredible odds. I found myself moving seamlessly between being behind the camera, directing, and stepping in front of it, sharing a moment of connection with these incredible women. I was no longer afraid of the lens or of my own reflection. The closing image of my own story, for now at least, isn't a photograph. It's me sitting at my new desk in my own consultancy, the New York skyline sprawling outside. I'm signing a contract for my company's first major independent client, and just visible through the window behind me, a tiny speck in the distance, is that billboard. My billboard. a constant, quiet reminder that rebirth is always possible. My name is Mia Chen, and this is my story on my terms.